Hello friends, this is me Payal Dutta, and in today's video we are going to study the story Oliver Asks for More by Charles Dickens. Now this is an excerpt from Dickens's novel Oliver Twist, and it was written during Queen Victoria's reign, that is the Victorian age, that is 1830s London. So in this story, Dickens, he is going to explore the life of an orphan and show the society of London during the Industrial Revolution of England. So without delay, let us start. Among other buildings in a town in England, there was a house for poor people who had no money and nowhere to live. So there was a fictional town in Dickens's novel, and Oliver Twist, this novel takes place in a town called MUDFOG, that is a fictional town. So among other buildings, among other residential buildings, among other industrial buildings, among other buildings in this town called MUDFOG in England, there was a house for poor people who had no money, who were penniless and nowhere to live, that is, who were homeless. And what were those houses called? This was called the workhouse. So you have the Industrial Revolution taking place in England. So the people from the countryside, they are coming to England proper, to the towns to work as labourers. So they have no place to live, they are poor, and so they are living in these workhouses. And Oliver Twist, who is the protagonist of our novel, who is the central character of our story, he too was born in a workhouse. That is, he had no money, he had no place to live. His mother, a young woman, lay ill in bed. So his mother is about to, we are talking about a time when his mother is ill in bed and about to deliver Oliver. And a doctor and an old woman stood by her side. So she was being assisted by a doctor and an old woman. She lifted her head from the pillow. So you see, she was in a very critical condition when she was about to deliver Oliver. She could only lift her head from the pillow. She couldn't move. "Let me see the child and die," she said. So she was aware that she is so critical that she might die any moment. So she is asking the doctor and the old woman to show her her child so that she could die peacefully. "Oh, you mustn't talk about dying yet," said the doctor. So the doctor is insisting her that you should be more optimistic. You should not think about dying. "No, dear," said the old man. "You are too young to die." So the old woman too, she's trying to motivate her. She's trying to inspire her to live longer. The young woman shook her head and held out her hand towards the child. So she shook her head. That is, she is aware that she will die any moment. So she refuses to listen to the doctor and the old woman to be optimistic. And she stretches her hand out and she asks them to give her her child. She wants to have a look at her child. The doctor put the child in her arms. So the doctor kept her request and he gave her her child. She pressed her cold white lips to its face and then fell back. So she was pale, she was weak, she was cold, she was about to die. Her lips, they had dehydrated, they were white to its face, and she pressed her lips to its face. She kissed it and then fell back. That is, she died. So you see, she had lifted her head from the pillow and now she fell back. So what did the doctor conclude? The doctor said that she is dead. He announced her death. "Yes, poor dear," said the old woman as she took the child away from its dead mother. "Poor dear." So she is sympathizing with the mother. For the mother. "She was a good-looking woman," said the doctor as he put on his hat and gloves. "Where did she come from?" So the doctor looks at her and he praises her. And then she puts on his hat and gloves. That is, he's now about to leave. He's about to leave the warehouse. Where did she come from? So she inquires about from where she came. Because you see, as we said earlier, that people who had no place to live, they came and took refuge in the warehouse. So the doctor is asking, from where did this lady come? She looks so beautiful, she looks so good, and she is young. "She was brought here last night," said the old woman. So the lady didn't come herself, but she was brought. She was brought by someone. "She was lying in the street. She had walked a long way and her shoes had holes in them." So she was found lying in the streets of London and her shoes had holes. That is, they were worn out, which indicates that she had taken a long journey. She had walked a long way and nobody knows where she came from. So her whereabouts were unknown and where she was going to. So no one knows where she was heading towards, but she had taken a very long journey that could be made out by her worn out shoes, which had holes in them. The doctor raised the dead woman's left hand. So the doctor, he took her left hand and he looked at it. "The usual story," he said. "I see that she has no ring on her finger." So the doctor concluded that because she was not married and she was pregnant, maybe that is why she left her house and she was lying in the street. So he says that this is the usual story. So in London, during the Industrial Revolution, during the Victorian age, you see, this was supposed to be a usual story. So this is the condition of London. Dickens is trying to show that the condition of London was pathetic during the Industrial Revolution, during the industrial setting of London, that is during 1830s. And then the doctor tells the old woman good night and he leaves. He went home to his dinner to have his meal. The old woman sat down on a chair in front of the fire and began to dress the baby. So now what does the old woman do? She sits in front of the fireplace and she is dressing the child. She dressed him in the very old clothes used for babies who were born in the workhouse. So you see, there is no love, there is no compassion in the workhouse. A newborn babe is born and they are giving him old clothes, not only old clothes but very old clothes. So there is lack of love, there is lack of compassion. So Oliver, he doesn't get the love he needs from the very day he was born. And you see that there is a failure of the workhouse system. That is what Dickens is trying to show. The child was an orphan born into a world which had no love or pity for him. So he was born in a loveless, in a pitiless society. A society that was lacking in love, that was lacking in compassion. No one was able to discover who the baby's father was, so the father was unknown, or what his mother's name was. So the mother died, so the mother's name is also unknown. But you have this one person called Mr. Bumble, who is an important officer in town, that he was very important person in town, and what did he do? He used to invent names for the babies. He chose the name Oliver Twist. So he named Oliver. And what name did he give him? Oliver Twist. And what reason did he give for naming Oliver so? He said that we name the new babies here in order from A to Z. That is, I use the alphabetical order to name the children. He explained when people asked him, why do you call him by the name Oliver Twist? This is the reason that he gave. I named the last one Swabble. So his name began with S. So this one's name should begin with T. So this one is Twist and the next one will be unwin. Now here you must know that Dickens, he himself also stayed for 2 years in a workhouse. He worked for the workhouse when he was 12, and because of that he lost most portion of his education. And when he was working in the workhouse, Dickens there, he met a friend, and his name was Peter Tolliver. So it may be the name Oliver Twist may have been taken from his friend's name, Peter Tolliver. Okay, so now there is a shift of time. So now, so long we have seen that Oliver is born. Now we are going to read of a time when Oliver is 9 years old. So at the age of 9, Oliver was pale, thin child. That is, he was weak and his condition was pathetic. He and the other workhouse boys never had enough warm clothes or food. So obviously, if you don't get enough compassion, you do not get enough food, you will be weak and pathetic. So for 9 years that he spent in the workhouse, he was not given proper food. He was not given adequate amount to eat. What did they get? They were given only 3 meals of thin soup every day. So you are getting soup that is thin. And on Sundays, they had a small piece of bread. So throughout the week, they used to get 3 meals of thin soup, and only on Sundays, they had a small piece of bread to eat. So that made the workhouse boys thin and weak, pale. They were fed in a big hall. So you see, they were given small piece of bread, little soup, but the hall was big. So there were many children. A large pot stood at one end of the room. So when the pot is so large, and the soup was served by the master. There was a master. He distributed the soup to the children, and each boy had one small bowl of soup and no more. So everyone got a small bowl. So see, the size of the bowl is even small, and no more. So you cannot ask for more soup. You have to consume 3 meals of small portion of soup, that too thin soup, every day. The bowls never needed washing. There was no need to wash the bowls. Why? Because the boys cleaned them with their spoons until they shone. So the boys were so hungry that when they got the soup, they had the soup till its last drop. And they cleaned it with the spoon till the bowls, they used to shine. So one day what happened? One day Oliver and his friends decided that one boy would walk up to the master after supper and ask for more soup. So if you read Oliver Twist, there you will see that there is a tall boy who lives along with them in the workhouse. And he says he's trying to frighten the others. So he says that the next day, if I am hungry and I don't get extra soup, I'm going to eat one of you. So Oliver was chosen to go up to the master the next day and ask for extra soup. So Oliver was chosen in the evening. Now the evening has come when Oliver has to ask for extra soup. So the boys have all gone to that long, large hall, the hall room, and they sat down at the tables. The master stood by the pot at the end of the room, and the soup was served, and he served the soup. It disappeared quickly. So the soup, it disappeared quickly. The boys were always hungry. The boys whispered and made signs to Oliver. So they are giving signals to Oliver. They are whispering that this is the time for you to perform your task. You have to go up to the master and you have to tell the master to give you some extra soup. He stood up from the table, that is Oliver. He raised from his seat and went to the master, and he goes with his bowl and spoon in hand. "Please, sir," he said, I want some more. So he requests the master to give him some more soup. The master was fat, healthy man. So you see what Dickens is saying, that the one who runs the workhouse, he gets ample amount of food. So this master is fat and healthy. But when he hears that Oliver wants some extra soup, he went very pale, that is, he looked lifeless. He is shocked. He looked with surprise at the small boy. He was astonished. He was amazed as what did this boy say? No one before has ever asked for extra soup. What? Said the master at last in a quiet voice. So he was surprised. So finally he realized what he had heard, and he is saying, what? Please, sir, repeated Oliver, I want some more. So Oliver repeated that he wanted some more soup. And now the master is very annoyed. The master hit Oliver with his spoon and seized him and cried for help. Seized him meaning he grabbed Oliver. He hit Oliver with the spoon. He grabbed him and he called for Mr. Bumble for his assistance, as in, what should we do to this boy? Mr. Bumble rushed into the room. He hurried and he came to the hall. And the master told him what Oliver had said. Now he has started complaining about Oliver. He asked for more, Mr. Bumble cried. Even Mr. Bumble is shocked. I cannot believe it, as if Oliver had done a crime. One day they will hang the boy. So when do you hang somebody? When the person is a criminal. So Oliver has done a crime. So one day the people of England are going to hang this boy for asking for more. He took Oliver away and shut him in a dark room. The next morning, a notice appeared on the workhouse gate. £5 were offered to anybody who would take Oliver Twist. So Mr. Bumble, he locks Oliver in a dark room. So you see the kind of punishment they used to get in the workhouse. And the next morning, what did they do? They stuck a poster outside the gate, and the poster said that whoever is going to take away Oliver from the workhouse, they will be given £5 as reward. So Oliver was a prisoner in that cold, dark room for a whole week. For an entire week, he was kept inside that dark room. As if he was a criminal, he was a prisoner. Every morning, he was taken outside to wash. So every morning, he was taken outside that room for a bath. And Mr. Bumble beat him with a stick. So there was physical violence happening during that time. This is what Dickens is trying to show. That physical violence, domestic violence was at its height during the Victorian era. So Mr. Bumble beat Oliver with a stick. Then he was taken into a large hall where the boys had their soup. So where they were eating, Mr. Bumble took Oliver there. And what did he do? Did he serve him some soup? No, Mr. Bumble beat him in front of everybody. So Mr. Bumble is trying to show the other kids that if you ask for more, this is what is going to happen to you. These are the consequences that will fall on you. And so Oliver, he cried all day. He was too young. He was 9 years old and all these things are happening to him. So he cried all day. When night came, he tried to sleep, but it was cold, lonely and frightened. He was isolated from everybody. But one day what happened? One day outside the high workhouse gate, Mr. Bumble met Mr. Sawberry. So mark this word, high workhouse gate. So the gates of the workhouse, they were high. That is what is happening inside the workhouse, the torture that cannot be seen. Anyone who lives inside the workhouse cannot jump outside. Anyone who is outside cannot see what is happening inside. So Mr. Bumble, he knew Mr. Sawberry. Mr. Sawberry knew him because Mr. Sawberry used to make coffins for the people of the warehouse. So when Mr. Sawberry, he sees Mr. Bumble, they have a little conversation. Mr. Sawberry was a tall, thin man who wore black clothes and made coffins. So you see, he used to wear black clothes. Now, in Julius Caesar also, in the very first scene, you will see that Flavius is saying that what are your signs of your profession? So here, the sign of Mr. Sawberry's profession was his black clothes. So he was a coffin maker and black clothes was his sign of profession. Many often coffins for the poor people who died in the workhouse. So he made coffins for the people who used to die inside the workhouse because they got no food. They were thin, they were pale, they were weak, and they died out of hunger, out of overwork. And then this Mr. Sawberry, he used to make coffins for them. I have prepared the coffins for the 2 women who died last night, he said to Mr. Bumble. So he had come to report that the coffins were ready. The previous night, 2 women had died and 2 coffins were ordered. So he has made them and they are ready. He has come to inform Mr. Bumble. So what does Mr. Bumble say? Good that the coffins are ready. You will be rich one day, Mr. Sawberry. So, Mr. Bumble, see what he's saying, that people will keep on dying because they are not getting food, and that is why more coffins will be required, and this will make you rich one day. Do you know anybody who wants a boy and 5 pounds? So, he's asking Mr. Sawberry whether he knew anybody who was looking for a boy and was ready to accept 5 pounds. Indirectly, he's trying to tell Mr. Sawberry, please take Oliver away from this warehouse. We don't want him anymore. We want to get rid of this boy, so you take him. And he raised his stick and pointed to the notice on the gate. So he's trying to prove that whatever I am saying is true. I'm not joking with you. So you can have Oliver for yourself and you will also get 5 pounds. So in this story, you can see that Dickens is actually trying to satirize the child labor, the domestic violence, the physical violence, and all the corruption that was taking place in London. All the corruption that was taking place due to the Industrial Revolution in England in 1830s when Queen Victoria was reigning. Okay, so this is the explanation for this short story. I hope you could understand every line. So we will meet you in our next video. Thank you, and if you have any questions or any queries, you can ask in the comment section below.